Like the large sedan here in America, the subcompact hatchback was once a booming segment, but now it's been all but replaced by tiny subcompact crossovers like the Nissan Kicks behind me. Previously, there was a Nissan Versa Note. That was the hatchback version of the Versa, and they wanted to replace it with something that they could market as a crossover because that is all that consumers want these days. And now look at that segment. It has absolutely blossomed into one of the most populated segments of vehicles in America today. However, it's not filled with success stories. We've got some really good options like the Kicks here and, of course, the Subaru Crosstrek, which was really a runaway success for them. But then you have things like the Toyota CHR, which has just been killed off after this 2022 model year. So sometimes style can go a little bit too far. I think in this segment, it's all about practicality, value, and space on the inside per dollar of what you're spending. Let's take a closer look at the Nissan Kicks and see how it stacks up in a very saturated segment here in early 2023. Besides the Versa, this is Nissan's least expensive product, but at the SR trim level, this is around $26,000, but you're getting a lot of equipment. So up front here, we have full LED headlights and turn signals, as well as LED fog lights, and the front end is what my mother would describe as cute, even though she thought the Toyota Tacoma was cute, but in my opinion, it's also a very bite-sized, fun-looking little car, and I think it's Nissan's best design attempt at a car this size. At 169.1 inches long, the Kicks here remain solidly at the center of the pack in terms of exterior size, but this segment does have quite a bit of bandwidth. You could go down to a Hyundai Venue, which is teeny tiny, or go up to a Subaru Crosstrek, which is definitely a little bit bigger than this, which really proves the value proposition. If you want that kind of room, you don't want to spend that much money, and you don't care about going too fast, the Kicks will provide a lot of the things you're looking for. And I do think the design of the Kicks has aged pretty well, and it still wears its proportions quite nicely, especially with these 17-inch wheels. These are the optional wheels you get on the SR trim. They're from the SR Premium package. These are 205/55 Firestone FT140 tires. And as you can tell, there's quite a bit of ground clearance. We've got 8.3 inches, which is very competitive for this segment. When Nissan refreshed the Kicks a couple of years ago, they added this inactive light bar back here. There is no illumination to what's happening here in red between the logo and the taillights, but it does make the car look wider than it is, so that is a nice plus. As you can see, we do have incandescent turn signals, but we do have LED lights in the back that help supplement that, and we have a rear wiper blade, which is great to see on a subcompact like this. But down below at the bottom, we have this rather conspicuously placed single exhaust port. It is chrome and it has Nissan embossed on the top, but it sticks out a little far and it looks a little too sporty for what's happening inside. Standard driver assistance features on the 2023 Kicks include automatic high beams, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, blind spot monitor, lane departure warning, but not prevention. It will just vibrate the steering wheel as you go over the lane. Rear cross traffic alert, and rear parking sensors. Optional are a 360-degree surround view camera system, adaptive cruise control, and a driver attention monitor. The carryover powertrain for the Kicks in 2023 is this 1.6-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder, producing 122 horsepower and 114 pound-feet of torque through front-wheel drive only. It'll get you 31 miles per gallon in the city, 36 on the highway, and 33 combined, and that's the only rating I can give you because you can only get it one way with a CVT. But stay tuned for the drive portion because I actually think the CVT works in this application, unlike the Nissan Altima I just had. I'm going to give front seat comfort a 7 out of 10. The reason for that is there are a lot of options in this segment, and quite a few of them just have more comfortable front seats than this. These are a little bit firm and a little bit lumpy in the back. I just can't find a good position where my back feels comfortable, and there's no lumbar support at all. These are manually adjustable on this side, so obviously manually adjustable on that side, but on this SR trim with the premium package, they are heated and wrapped in synthetic leather. If you don't like this interior color, you can step back down to the SR without that package, and you'll get a cloth interior with a black and brown two-tone look. So if you prefer that, save yourself some money. Otherwise, we do have a tilt and telescoping steering wheel, which is nice to have because it's also heated. That is a nice addition to see, especially up here in Detroit, where again, it is like 31 degrees right now. So it's a little chilly, and that is nice to have. It gets nice and toasty. But compared to the other newer Nissan steering wheels, this is the new Nissan steering wheel, but the leather wrapping around it, it's not as high quality feeling. It's a little bit less supple. So if you like a much softer feeling steering wheel, you might have to spend some more money. And I've got quite a bit of headroom left. You can't really see it on camera, but I've got about that much left. So 5 to 6 inches of headroom. This is a very tall interior, and that is really helpful in the back seat. Back here is a little bit of a different story. I actually kind of find this seat more comfortable than that seat. I think it's because the lumbar is a little bit more subdued, and that's how I prefer it. And you can't change that for the front seat, so I guess I'm going to pick the back seat because I like it more. That's a first. Anyway, You got actually quite a lot to work with back here. Nissan gives you 2 USB-A charge-only ports right here in the center console. You do have 1 seat back pocket on the passenger side, not on the driver's side. There are no air vents back here or anything, but the seats are comfortable and there's enough space between the bottom of the seat back and the floor that I don't feel like my knees are super high up. But otherwise, the other cool thing to know about this interior, on this trim specifically, is because we have the Bose premium sound system, this headrest is unique to that one. This is the normal type of headrest you'd get on any other model, but this one has the Bose speaker in it, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But on the back of it, it's black here, but on the back of this one, it's gray. No power tailgate is available on the Kicks. What did you expect? But once you manually open the tailgate, you have access to 25.3 cubic feet of space behind the second row. That is very class competitive. And there is some storage under the floor here. It's minimal because we do have a spare tire, which is nice. It's not a full size, but it's pretty big, so that'll work. And you also have the tools, all the necessary things that you need to actually replace a wheel yourself. So that's nice, Nissan, thank you very much. There are no handles back here to fold the second row seats, but they do fold 60/40 once you go around to do it. And once you do that and you remove this hard-shelled tonneau cover here, you have access to a whopping 53.1 cubic feet of space. And I apologize if I'm shivering. It's below freezing here right now. But that, like I said, it's not the largest vehicle on the outside in the class, but it is basically one of the largest in the class on the inside. Besides the lack of any sort of storage nets or cargo dividers, my only real gripe with the cargo area back here is the fact that we have this hinge right here that's connected to the second row seats. That hinge does not move from that position even when the seats fold down, so you always will have this little bit of structure sticking out into your cargo space. It's not a deal breaker, of course, but it is notable. Taking a look around the interior, a reminder that this is the SR trim with the SR Premium package. You can identify a premium package by these exact seats. These are the charcoal Primatex synthetic leather seats. They've got this two-tone action going on here with the orange, brown, red stitching, if you will. I'm not sure which color it is, but it's one of those three. But I do want to take this moment to stop and appreciate all the hard work and effort that went into actually landing on this design. Even though it may look simple, there were a lot of choices here, and visually it looks good. And you have to remember, we're not paying that much for it, so touching it and feeling it and getting all down in the weeds about that is not really a good use of your time. Now moving over here to the dashboard, this is where things still look pretty interesting. We do have that French stitching look with that reddish brown right there. That looks nice. This is a softer padding on the dash, but up here, it gets harder again. Down here we have a glove box. It's not the smallest. It's definitely wide in terms of the opening, but it's not super deep. Down there in the abyss is one of the speakers for the really good Bose stereo system you get on this package. It's got the headrest speaker behind me, which adds a sort of immersive quality to it. You actually can go in the settings and adjust the sound stage of the sound system and make it a little bit wider, and a lot of that effect is added by that speaker right behind your head. Now moving over to the center of the dashboard, this is where a lot is shared with the Nissan Versa. We've got this sort of, looks like a temporary tablet setup look to me. It's always appeared that way when Nissan does this. It's one of those looks where it seems like you could just pop that out and take it as a mobile device with you. It doesn't actually tilt or anything, but it's, it's different, it's unique. Full touchscreen, we've got wired Apple CarPlay, wired Android Auto, but a somewhat unique feature for this category is the 360-degree surround view camera. On this trim, we also have automatic climate control. It is single zone, but you do also have the buttons, of course, for those heated seats. There are 2 stages of heat for the seats. And then down below here, there is no wireless charge pad, but we do have an electronic parking brake and the activation for the auto brake hold. And like with the Nissan Altima I just had, the stop-start button is right here by the shifter. I will admit, on both vehicles, I forgot about that a lot and was always reaching over here. And it is funny, you can tell that they didn't swap out the column from the lower trims with the actual key. They just left that there and then put the start button right here for these upper trims. Then we have a pretty simple shifter here, just forward and backward all the way down to L, so the whole Prindle, but nothing special, nothing extra. 2 decent sized cup holders. They don't fit massive sized cups, but they'll fit the average. And then a super tiny little compartment under the glove box. It's kind of funny to look at. You could probably put some coins there and maybe an apple for teacher right there, but that's about it. At least this does have a decent amount of padding to it, so this armrest is much better than the one on the doors. One somewhat random but noteworthy feature in here that my car doesn't have is an auto-dimming rearview mirror. I really wish mine had that because I'm always having to flip that little tab when I get in the car at night or in the daytime. Unfortunately, there is no sunroof of any size available on the Kicks. On this particular trim, we have a partial LCD instrument cluster. On the left 2/3 is the LCD. The right is a physical speedometer with some other actual warning lights. But over here on the left, you can actually shuffle through quite a few options. Then here's the front view of the Nissan steering wheel. Again, not the softest leather wrapping, but it is something to that effect. I love the design of Nissan steering wheels. They're right in line with the Mazda steering wheel that they currently offer. It just has a very sporty and sleek look to it. I like the center airbag cover. It doesn't need anything too fancy or anything more than this. It just looks elegant and sporty at the same time. It has all the buttons and functions you need, and it's heated. But as usual for a Nissan wheel, we have controls here for your audio, as well as the D-pad and back button for whatever is going on up there. And then on the right, we have controls for your cruise control, as well as voice command and your phone. Sorry in advance for the poorer than average lighting. Due to some technical difficulties in my filming day today, I did not get out on the road with this thing until it started getting dark. Luckily, it's not pitch black yet, so we'll work with what we have. But let's talk about how this thing drives. In my 0 to 60 testing with, keep in mind, wet-ish roads, I got 9.77 seconds. That's actually not that bad. It's not as bad as I was expecting, especially compared to other naturally aspirated 4-cylinders in this category. You could be doing worse. And I think the days of cars in this category being 10 plus seconds in every situation, I think those days are beyond us. Unless, of course, you want the Mitsubishi Mirage. Now, the CVT here is a big talking point for most Nissan products, and actually, as I alluded to earlier, I don't mind it here. It actually gave me the fastest 0 to 60 times I probably could have gotten with this naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. The 9.7 seconds 0 to 60 time was better than I was expecting, and better than what you might get out of a transmission that's gonna try to simulate gear shifts. This under hard acceleration does not simulate gear shifts, it just drones. But that actually gives it the best 0 to 60 time. Now, in the Altima I just had, that's where it would be inconsistent with how it would deliver power. Sometimes it would drone, sometimes it would shift. It could never decide because it had too much power to work with, I guess. But here, it's always doing what it needs to do to get you the fastest possible acceleration times. And this is not a car about speed, of course. When it's time to brake the Kicks, these 205mm wide tires actually do a decent job, especially in the wetter conditions I've been experiencing. This took the same amount of distance as the Altima, 135 feet to get from 60 back to 0. And the brakes, like the Altimas, felt very, very solid. They never feel mushy. There's always actual braking happening. There's no dead space or anything like that. So I like the brakes, I like the braking. I would like to test it again in a warmer climate, but you can check out Alex's video for that. He has a review on basically the exact same car as this, just back in 2021. I don't think it's necessary for me to dwell on handling that much because that's not exactly the mission of this car. I'm gonna say it probably earns a B. Now, if you do push it, you are going to see the tires will not be able to keep up in terms of grip. If you're going quickly through a highway overpass, which has a curve to it, you're gonna find its limits pretty quickly. There's just not a lot of sportiness to this experience, but that's okay. We're not on a twisty road right now. Let's talk about ride quality. It's actually really good in this car, especially out on the highway where I've spent a lot of my driving this week because where I live in Detroit, a lot of the things I need to get to are a highways drive away. So that's where I've been able to test out the ride quality mostly, and it's really quite compliant. Even though we have a short wheelbase, there's no sort of pitching, there's no bouncing. It stays very planted and very stable, even at highway speeds. Now, a passing crosswind or a passing large vehicle does upset it a little bit, but that's because this is a tiny car that's not very heavy. I would say based on my experience, I think the new Honda HR-V is actually pretty comparable to this in terms of ride quality. That car costs about $1,000 or $2 more at the top end, so you are getting a nicer interior, but the CVT delivery is actually pretty similar in that car as well. I would have to 0 to 60 test that one myself to see if it's faster than this, but when I drove it for the first time last year, I didn't think it felt much faster than this. This still holds its own though. I actually can't really discern much of a difference between this and that HR-V. This definitely feels more sorted than the Jeep offerings like a Compass or a Renegade though. Cabin noise at 50 miles per hour came in at a pretty reasonable 61 decibels. That is a lot lower than I was expecting. I think it's reasonable to assume that a vehicle this size with an engine that small would get fantastic fuel economy, but it's only rated at 31 in the city and 36 on the highway. And on my test loop around the Detroit metro area, I got exactly 31 miles per gallon, but that was with a mix of city and highway. Through my whole week with the car, I've been getting closer to 26. So if you're expecting Prius-like fuel economy, you're just not going to find it here. There is no hybrid version, and that is a shame because overseas in Europe and Japan and everywhere else in Asia, you'll find cars like this with hybrid powertrains. For some reason in America, they just don't seem to be viable, and therefore, they're not on offer. The best example of a car that we used to get in this segment that was ultra efficient and was a hybrid was the Toyota Prius C. Of course, they no longer make the Prius C, so we're really left with all the naturally aspirated four-cylinder entries in the subcompact crossover and compact hatchback categories, which really that segment right there only includes now the Kia Rio and the Mitsubishi Mirage. So very small amount of competitors there, and some of those might do better on fuel economy. With everything said and done, I actually really enjoy my time behind the wheel in this car. I don't know if it's the combination of creature comforts or the comfortable ride. It's not the seats, but everything else considered, I actually don't hate being in this car. I really look forward to getting back into it, and I think most people who find themselves behind the wheel of a Kicks are probably going to be satisfied with it. And again, you've got a lot of other options to choose from, so make sure you test drive. But I think it's worth test driving the Kicks. Now let's kick off the end of this review by going over my final thoughts on the Nissan Kicks. Starting with the fact that at the SR trim level, that top trim, you do get a lot of feature content for $26,000 or $27,000, including a 360-degree surround view camera, heated and ventilated seats, and a really excellent stereo, which of course I'll touch on in just a second. And then on the inside, this is a taller little hatchback shape, so it has very good headroom and really honestly surprisingly good rear seat space. It's not going to blow you out of the water, but for what you're getting and the footprint on the outside, it is quite usable. There's also cute and quirky styling to be had here. If you get the two-tone paint option, it really emphasizes that even further, something that I think people at the younger age of the market are definitely going to like. Then there's that Bose stereo system, which continues to solidify my opinion on the Bose branding, that really any stereo that has it probably sounds pretty darn good, and that's no different here with those headrest speakers, or I guess the one headrest speaker behind the driver. This really has a more surround sound feel to it than any other sound systems that claim to have surround sound. So if you like sound systems and you like audio, you're gonna wanna take a look at the Kicks. Now there is stiff competition once you do get up to that $26,000, $27,000 price category. For example, there are going to be cars from Hyundai and Kia that may not be hatchbacks, but they could be sedans like the Elantra and things like that that might offer more power or more feature content at the $26,000 level, and perhaps more room on the inside as well. So if you want a fully loaded Kicks, you will be encroaching on the territory of some of the value-packed players in this segment. So do make sure to really closely compare those options before you pull the trigger. Now, the Kicks has one engine option, as you know, and it is slow, but it's not scary slow. It took me less than 10 seconds to get to 60 miles per hour. A couple of years ago, there were a lot more options on the market that did that over 10 seconds, so the fact that we're under 10 seconds in a Kicks is pretty respectable, but there's no all-wheel drive on the Kicks available. So if you want that four-wheel traction, you're gonna have to step up to something, well, at least in the Nissan lineup, something pretty drastic, up to a Rogue. That is a lot bigger than the Kicks. There are other competitive brands that will offer things in between Kick-sized and Rogue size, so definitely take a look at those if that is something that fits you a little bit better. Now when it comes to pricing, all of the first three options you see on your screen start at right around $21,000, all just a smidge above. The Kona does stand out from this crowd though because it is offered with all-wheel drive, a higher performance turbo engine, and an even higher performance turbo engine in the form of the Kona N, but I don't include that in this pricing because that is really a separate, more performance-oriented vehicle than this. But with that said, the pricing without considering the Kona N tops out at $30,495, so a good bit more than any of the other competitors, including the Kicks, which tops out at $26,680. The Kia Soul tops out at $27,560, and that all-new Chevy Trax that has been redesigned for 2024 tops out at right around $27,000, give or take $1,000. So the Trax is going to put up a good fight because it looks really good. The interior is definitely nicer than the Kicks. We have sat in one and we can tell you that from experience. It definitely feels a little bit nicer, but that new Kona is coming too, which is not this 2023. The 2024 Kona will be out pretty much by the end of this year. That's at least what we're all expecting. And its interior will probably blow all of these out of the water, but its price is probably gonna go up just a little bit. But again, if you want fuel economy, if you want something simple that's easy to configure for a first-time car buyer or somebody who's just looking for an easy option that's still decently good to drive, doesn't really beat you up on the road, and has a good sound system, the Kicks really represents a great value and one that is competitive at this level. Like I said earlier, at that base price, you really can't beat it. It has a lot more content or a lot more style than even the Soul or the Trax at that low end. But once you top it out, you have some features that the competition doesn't have. Let me know what you think about all that in the comment section below. I really enjoyed my time with the Kicks. I definitely would recommend it to people shopping for a kid's first car or somebody looking for a cheap and cheerful new model in a sea of cars that cost $30,000, $40,000, and $50,000 these days. I'm glad Nissan is still focused on the lower end of the market because that's one area where I think we are really lacking now in 2023. Thanks again for watching. We really appreciate your view. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Like this video if you like cheap and cheerful compact cars, and subscribe if you like detailed car reviews. Until I see you next time, take care.